Welcome to For Every Response, the podcast from Emergency Services Times, sponsored by MSA Safety. In this series, we bring you sessions from the Emergency Services Show and the Emergency Tech Show 2025. Chief Fire Officer Peter Arnevall travelled to the show from Sweden, where he heads up the Stockholm Fire Brigade. He leads a fascinating comparative discussion about firefighters and contaminants. The panel looks at practical solutions and considers why culture should be at the heart of this important topic.
Good afternoon, everybody. My name is Luke Gazzard. I'm the Assistant Chief Fire Officer at Avon Fire and Rescue, but I'm also the NFCC project lead for contaminants. I'd like to introduce Peter Arnevall, who's the Chief Fire Officer at Stockholm Fire Brigade over in Sweden.
Yep.
In the middle here, we have John Ashton, who is the Senior Health and Safety Manager at West Mids, but he also works with me on the National NFCC project. Further on, we have Becky Yates, who is the Health and Safety Manager at Avon Fire and Rescue Service. So this session is all around the Swedish perspective on contaminants. And Peter here has got a PowerPoint presentation for about 25 minutes. We'll ask a few questions amongst the three of us on stage, and then we'll open up to a bit of Q&A amongst the audience if anyone's got any questions. So over to you, Peter.
Thank you so much for having me. As Luke said, I'm from Stockholm. I'm the Chief Fire Officer of the Greater Stockholm Fire Brigade. We're in charge of the capital city. I have been given 20-25 minutes to try and summarize what we've been doing for the last 20-25 years or so. So stay with me, as English ain't my native language. So and especially the words for decontamination and contaminants are not within the Swedish curriculum. So stay with me, okay? Anyway, the Swedish perspective. We are looking at this like the Swiss cheese, not the Swedish cheese, which means we have multiple layers when it comes to contaminants. The PPE is our last line of defense. We actually don't want to end up in the last line of defense. We don't even want to use our PPEs. We want to eliminate it before that. The Healthy Firefighter project in Sweden is now part of a much bigger project that is called the Healthy Workplace. So I'm going to circle back to Healthy Workplace by talking about the project regarding healthy firefighters. It actually all started back in 2007, 2006. So we've been doing this for almost 20 years now. The start of it was a couple of different research papers coming out. And actually one done in Stockholm at Karolinska Institute. That's one of the big research institutes in Sweden that actually did tests and cancer screening on my personnel. I wasn't a director back then. It was way before I started. But they did screenings way back to the people started in the 60s and 70s. And they could actually see that some of the firefighters within the Greater Stockholm Fire Brigade actually had a higher risk of getting cancer. That was the start of it. So we've been doing this for 20 years, which is quite a long time. And we try to adapt new science that is being delivered. You know, there's papers and research being delivered all the time. We try to bring that into consideration. And we do this together with the unions, of course, and we do this with the governmental agencies. But it's we work a bit differently than you do in the UK, which means I'm on a local level, which means it's up to me. The governmental agencies can't tell me what to do, so it's up to the different fire brigades to do what they want with it. We've been working really hard with this. There is sort of a national standard, which is being adopted by all the 133 or 35 different fire departments within Sweden. Yeah, we're a small country, but we love our different fire brigades, so 133 or so. And it's called the Skellefteå model. That's Swedish. It's going to be in the quiz later on, so try and pronounce it. Skellefteå. Everyone's with me? Yeah? That was the start. And now we mostly call it actually the Swedish way, because Skellefteå, for some reason, is hard for other people to pronounce. That was developed back in 2012, actually by a friend of mine. He was part of that project. But now we evolved it even further. So much of the writings done about this talks about the Skellefteå model, but if you adopt that, you need to know that it's actually quite old. It's 10 years old now. We have come quite a bit further than that. Anyway, what we're doing is we look at knowledge, insight, and mental preparedness as the base plate. Information and knowledge given to our employees, that's the base plate. And then we look at routines and workflows. If you get the knowledge and insight there, you have come 70% of the way when it comes to dealing with contamination. So we work really hard on giving our employees a good, solid base of understanding. Once they have reached that, okay, good, then we start looking at routines and workflows. How do we do? Where do we do? When do we do? What do we do? After that, we start looking at different individual methods. And then we start looking at tools and PPE, which means most of the work we do is actually not cool things like cool machinery or washing machines or whatever. That's not the first thing we look at. It's not the plastic gloves, it's not the breathing apparatus. That's the last thing we look at, because when in the multi-barrier system, if we are contaminated, well, that's actually not good. So we try to avoid that at all costs. And we try and use the same approach when it comes to carcinogenic contaminants within our working force as we do with, for example, hazardous materials. It's the same thing, or asbestos, or whatever you do. It's all about minimizing the exposure. If you're exposed, minimize the dose, and of course the occurrence. Where is it? So we try to apply the same thing, the standard operating procedures. We can't have different standard operating procedures for tens of thousands of different contaminants. It's the same procedure. You with me? Good. I'm trying to follow myself here. So what are we doing? Well, we have applied a way that our cabins, when we respond to incidents, our cabins are clean. No contaminants. We have CO2 cleaners and everything within them. But you're not allowed to put dirty equipment from the beginning within the fire engine or the ladder truck. Everything is clean. When we arrive on the fire scene, we take notice of where is the wind blowing from. For example, we're going to a car fire or whatever. Always wind in our back. Minimize the exposure. Take out the fans if needed. Stay away. Don't get contaminated at all. And as soon as the firefighters or the incident personnel has done their job, they dress right on scene. These are one of my crews from Station 17, Kista. They've just been in an apartment building, apartment fire. As soon as they come out, they drop their stuff. Put everything in plastic bags, plastic gloves on, so you don't get contaminated at all. Of course, spare set of PPEs within the fire engines, so you can put on warm, nice clothes. Sweden is a cold country, and trust me, it can rain in Sweden as well. It's not the problem only in England. It can rain in Sweden as well and can be cold. So you always have fresh clothes on, so you stay warm.
Hi, I'm Sam. I'm just wondering, so do you guys do real-time data collection of the contaminants that you've just talked about them, put them into a bag?
Yeah.
Is that, do the firefighters get feedback, or do you record the contaminants found within that PPE once it's been returned? Do you check that at all?
No, we don't routine checks. We do it from time to time, just to keep track of what type of materials we get exposed to, because society is evolving. Things are happening. You got lithium ionide batteries and solar panels and whatever, which means that we get new types of contaminants popping up. But it shouldn't matter, because we don't want to get exposed at all. And if we get exposed, drop it and store it away. So once they have dropped off their clothing and their PPE, they put it in bags. We store those outside of the cabin on the return trip. And when we return to the fire station, you call it red, amber, green. We call it red, yellow, green. We got a red side, that's the dirty side, and then you got the cleaning, and then you got the clean side. And we've been doing this quite long now. And the thing is that we've actually come to a point where the firefighters themselves point out, hey, John, you haven't decontaminated, you haven't taken your clothes off, do it. Which means it has set within our way of thinking, within our way of handling it. So actually, I don't need to drive my workforce for doing this. They are actually driving me now, because they are constantly evolving, constantly finding out new things and new ways to do it. And then of course it's the layout of the fire stations. This is Kungsholmen Fire Station, one of my fire stations. It's actually one of my newer fire stations. It's from 1931. I got 17 fire stations. Half of them are older than this one. My oldest one is from 1875. It's still in use, world oldest fire station, still in use, Guinness Book of Records and everything. You're free to come and watch. But what we have done is that we have been, we have one, the red side, that's the dirty side, and then you got, that's where we take out the material out of the fire engines. We do the first set of cleaning, of course, plastic glove, you got breathing masks and everything, and then it starts spreading out to the green side. Of course, the red side is overpressurized, so nothing can get away from there, and then it steps down. And as you can see, well, hopefully also you in the back, of course we got cleaning rooms and showers and so on. So as soon as you have dealt with the dirty equipment, you take a shower and you enter out. And yes, in Sweden we have a sauna on every fire station. Just want to make that clear. That's very important. So that's the healthy firefighter concept. Those pictures are also from one of my fire stations. That's the firefighter healthy firefighter project. But we have incorporated that in a much bigger project because there, of course, there's other factors leaning into this. And sorry for a lot of words, but it's just that it's hard to remember all the words in English, so I had to write a lot on the PowerPoint. And the change is actually been driven by a change in the pension system. Before, the Swedish firefighters were able to retire at 58. Now they've moved the retirement age up to 65, which means my firefighters need to work 7 years longer. Me, I had 65, I'm moving up to 67, and it's going to be 69, probably 70 before I'm being able to retire, which means they are pushing us 5 years also. And it's the same in the whole world. I guess you have the same discussions within your pension system. That means that we need to have a healthy workplace so all of my employees, staff personnel, not just firefighters, can work longer. So we have an all hazards approach. This is the bigger project that we're doing right now within my fire and rescue service, where we look at everything. We look at risk mitigation, we look at social and organizational work environment, we look at PTS, we look at everything. So a healthy firefighter project is just now one part of it, of a much bigger project. And it's actually doing quite good. The way we've done it is that since the working force is so involved by themselves, naturally, I've actually dropped this out on my stations into my crews and I've given them different projects. Station 17, shift forward, this is your project. Look at this. Not everything, of course. When it comes to PTS, you need to have some sort of psychiatrists involved, so yeah. So what have we done more? Well, physical tests, yearly tests and rehab. Of course, it's the universal thing is that we have all the shifts train once a day. We have gym in every stations. We have access to swimming pools and sports halls. What we've done is we have individual rehab plans as soon as we have injuries, which means we have individual rehab plans. And one thing we're doing right now is giving food, not restrictions. I would like that, but tips on how to actually eat. So we're actually teaching our firefighters what to cook and what's actually healthy for you to eat. Apparently, steaks ain't the best. Carrots are good for some reason. I don't know why, but apparently. And then we've done the evaluation of existing physics tests because we have physics tests when you start as a firefighter, then yearly, and those tests nobody knows where they come from. I did the gripping test over here at West Mids. We had that before. We don't have it later. Because we cooperated with the Swedish School of Sports and Health. They are the ones that are developing the Swedish national teams. Not the soccer team, let's not talk about soccer and Kosovo, okay? But we're good at cross-country skiing, so let's talk about cross-country skiing. It's the same guys that are evaluating the Swedish cross-country skiers. They know what they're doing. They did a big tests on all our firefighters, did VO2 max testing and screenings and everything, and they have developed a few types of physics tests that are really good, that actually matches the workload for the firefighters. And I didn't know that, but you can test claustrophobia. Did you know that? If you put someone in a dark room and see if they turn scared, that's not a test of claustrophobia. You actually can't force claustrophobic tests, which means we've stopped putting people in black boxes and trying to find out if they're claustrophobic, because you can't test that for some reason. I didn't know, but the scientists knew, which is good. And then, of course, we have lined up with the Swedish Defence Conscription and Assignments Agency. They are the one that are, we have the civil conscripts and the armed conscripts within the Swedish system. Every male and female do the conscript service. And they do the tests for the armed forces and the police authority. So we have let them do the mental screenings and putting out what types of tests to get the right personnel for the job. Simply by aligning ourselves with the Swedish Armed Forces and the police authority. And when it comes to yearly medical exams, all of my operative personnel, firefighters, incident commanders, dispatchers, they do yearly tests every year. And then every 5th year, we do an expanded test on them. And then when they turn 40, it's every 2nd year, and everyone above 50 every year. And that's when we do the extended cancer screening. That's when we do the blood works, and that's when we screen them more in depth. The staff personnel is only every 5th year, but we still do it. The firefighters every year. And the cancer screening we're doing is, some of them are incorporated within the standard Swedish that a whole of Swedish society is being tested for. Every female in Sweden does the breast cancer screening. Of course, that is incorporated in our tests as well. There's a discussion going on, I'm going to be honest about that, is whether or not we should expand these tests with even more tests. Because there are tests out there that are not just approved by the Swedish Health Authority yet. But they want to push us a bit harder. So we're having a discussion on how many tests are we actually going to run. Anyway, trying to conclude here. What we see is that the risk of cancer has dropped to a level almost equal to the standard population. I'm not aware of any severe cancer form within my working force of 800 employees. Of course, they don't tell me, all of my 800 employees don't tell me everything. But we usually hear the chatter, you know, someone has leukemia, someone has bladder cancer, someone has stomach cancer. It has dropped. You should be a bit careful with these numbers because the Swedish population is quite much smaller. We're only 10 million inhabitants. There are 15,000 firefighters within Sweden, of which 800 are mine. There could be within the standard variation. But since we don't hear the chatter going on, we're quite certain that something has happened. But then, of course, you're still going to have cancer within the working force because you still got lifestyle factors. Most of my firefighters are like me. They are in their 40s. They are white males. They are from Sweden. They like drinking beer and they like having steak dinner. Yeah, that will attract some type of cancer. And then, of course, we got those contaminants that we're not sure about what they actually do to us. PFAS. Trending right now. We don't know that much about it yet. And then there's also one thing that you need to know about the Swedish system. It's that I don't track them after retirement. As soon as they retire, it's not my responsibility and I'm not allowed to keep track of them. Which means we could have cancer starting as a few years after they retire. Whether or not they are work-related, we don't know. On the other hand, the Swedish population is living longer and longer, and cancer is more common when you're getting older, so there's also something there. As of our knowledge, we are not exactly sure which change has had the biggest impact. My guess and my assumption is that it is the mindset, the awareness, and the knowledge. Because if you're not exposed, and if you're exposed, you take care of yourself, the numbers are going to drop. That's why I'm certain it's like 70-80% of everything. And since it's become a natural thing for the crews to talk about, they take care of themselves, they take care of each other. So it's mostly, as of my understanding, a cultural thing. Just gonna say what we're looking into right now, and that is actually heat-related stress and cardiovascular strain. because we have not been keeping track of that, but we can see a rise within the Swedish population of heart diseases, and we can see an increase within the working force of the firefighters. I was in the States actually together with John and Luke a couple of years ago, and this is what they talked about. And even though we are an Arctic country, we put on more and more equipment, more and more, we are carrying more and more. It's getting hotter and hotter and warmer, and that affects your heart in some way. I don't have anything to give on this. If any one of you have a good answer, please give it to me, but this is what we're going to look into the next time. So that is pretty much what I was going to say. So thank you, and I'm going to hand it over to Luke.
This episode of the Emergency Services Times podcast is sponsored by MSA Safety, proudly supporting emergency services and first responders on the front line. At MSA Safety, protecting first responders isn't just what we do, it's who we are. We work closely with fire and rescue services across the UK to develop and deliver safety solutions designed to meet your ever-evolving needs. That includes MSA Bristol Firefighter PPE, trusted by services across the UK and beyond, shaped through years of collaboration with frontline teams. It also includes our growing investment in innovation and technology, from the connected M1 SCBA modular solution to our agile, fully managed service model that helps keep crews protected and ready to respond. But for us, safety goes beyond equipment. We believe in standing shoulder to shoulder with the people who dedicate their lives to protecting others, whether it's supporting firefighter charities, backing mental health initiatives, or showing up for community events. MSA is proud to be part of the emergency services family. To learn more about our work in the UK and how we're supporting first responders every step of the way, visit www.msasafety.com. With MSA Safety, when you go in, we go in with you.
That's a really, really insightful piece on the Swedish perspective and how you operate over in Sweden. Just want to come to John, if I may. John, what do you think the challenges are from a UK perspective to try to reach similar results as what they've got in Sweden?
Thanks, Luke. Everyone hear me? Yeah, I think it's quite obvious that we're in a different part of our journey at the moment. So talking to Peter, listening to it, they're a lot further down. I think 2 or 3 high-level challenges for me are quite obvious. That'd be a funding and a resource issue. So that would be local funding for your fire service, government funding, but also understanding how much funding is required for this. Looking at buildings, looking at vehicles, looking at changes, looking at shower facilities, all things that come along with that. I think the biggest issue for me would be a cultural issue. Now, that doesn't mean we have to spend a lot of money to get to where we need to get to. I've worked in a lot of different industries where culturally there's an issue with changing people's perceptions and how people work, because they've worked the same way for a number of years. Well, we can change this. We can change this through education, supervision, talking to people as they come into our industry and they start to challenge other people. And I was talking to Peter offline about this, and that's exactly what happens. I think people are just a bit further ahead than us at the moment. However, feedback from colleagues, we talk about it through NFCC and our Health and Safety Committee colleagues, tell me that they're seeing this already, people challenging people. That needs to continue. For me, research. So we've looked at a lot of research and our group has looked at a lot of research, but what we're using is European research, US research, a little bit of research here as well. I think there's some work where we should identify where we need to put our own research and how we take that forward. That obviously links back to funding and it goes around and around. What I will add at this point though is obviously talking to the regulator. Contaminants is raising his headies and he's raising his profile. However, the basic regulations that govern this have been around for years. And what we would expect and what you should expect from your services and what the regulator would expect is to meet those basic requirements. They've given us that heads up already. That is enough showers, males, female showers, washing facilities, toilets, towels, soaps, hair dryers they're talking about, going down to that level and making sure people have enough time off the run to make sure they're clean, dry and ready to go again. That also covers, and it's recently come to us, for fire service colleagues is around face fit testing and ensuring you've got your face fit testing in place as well. So the message that goes with the challenges is, yes, there are challenges. Some things can be done on a lesser budget, but some regulations have been in for some time, and we should be following them now.
Excellent. Thanks, John. Becky, over to you. What are some of the challenges you face in Avon Fire and Rescue in trying to drive that change on improving people's knowledge and awareness on contaminants?
Thanks, Luke. So one of the first things we started off doing was, as both John and Peter have mentioned, education, making people aware of the long-term health effects, publishing studies, getting workforce involved in some of the initiatives that we were doing. We've also done trials and involved some of our stations in those trials. But as well as doing all those things, we've published written documentation. So we've done a suite of operational information notes. We've done sharp reminders. We've also published some procedures and policies around safe undress and decontamination. And finally, we produced 2 e-learning packages so that people could sit and digest that information in their own time. And I think, as everyone's touched on so far, that helps improve the culture when you involve the workforce a little bit more. And I'm actually really proud of where we've got to so far, because I feel like people have embraced it more than they've embraced some of our other changes within the fire service, because it's well needed.
Reference your question about working in heat and climatic change. We could definitely chat about that, and I've got some ideas we could talk about and share. I guess the question is what are you guys doing, and what is the UK doing to piggyback off the learning of the Swedes and other people across Europe? How are you connecting those channels together, and what are you learning from the Swedish perspective from us in the UK, and where do we go to kind of get that information open so that as leaders you see that, but then on the ground people can see that as well?
Yeah, I think I'll just come in there and give you a bit of a flavour of what we're doing in the UK. We've got an NFCC national project that's ongoing, it's been in place for about 18 months. We're also very well connected with FEMA in the US. And that's a really important collaboration we've got, because they have a lot of money to spend on research in the US, money that we don't have in the UK. Yes, it can be problematic at times because it's US specific, but a lot of it is transferable over here in the UK. So we've also got really good connections with Sweden. We meet regularly with the HSE. They're really good advisors to us. And we also meet regularly with MCHLG as well. So that's a really important connection that we've got. So I think we've got a really good collaboration on the project of external stakeholders. It's just about getting those deliverables out now through the NFCC. Over to you, Peter. Anything to add?
Well, Well, the thing is that Sweden is an even smaller country than the UK compared to the US, which means that we actually look into the UK quite a lot. We try to follow what England is doing in all different aspects. This is one of the aspects where we have come a bit further. I agree to that. We're not perfect in any way. Don't interpret me as we're done and we're perfect, but we've come some way. And I would say, apart from culture, keep it simple. And my firefighters, when I employ people that are good inventors that can solve problems, that's the type of people I want. So I just give them the problem and they will find the solution. And most of these things are actually quite easy. It's not that I will spend million and million of Swedish kroners in rebuilding my fire stations. It's what can I do with what I have. So keeping it simple.
I think I'll just come in to add a further point on that, if possible. Becky, would you be able to just explain the good working relationship we've got with Fire Brigade Union at a local level?
Yeah, absolutely. So our Fire Brigade Union, they sit in on all of my health and safety groups. We also have a good relationship with them because by nature of what they do, they're ultimately promoting health and safety, and they are the advocate for all fire service personnel. So they just reinforce our message. Whenever we're putting new initiatives out, we always consult with our Fire Brigade Union and our other rep bodies so that we can get them and work collaboratively, because obviously they're trusted and they have such a good relationship with firefighters, and they sort of act as our intermediary. So we check everything by them, but they also bring concerns to us, and it works really well.
Yeah, hello, it's Kevin Trust, ex-West Sussex Fire and Rescue. Just a question to the Chief, really, with regard to your busiest station. How do you manage your pool stock arrangement? Have you got, when they debag the PPE and it goes for cleaning, do you maintain a large stock on the stations for PPE?
Yeah, well, all of the firefighters have at least 2 sets of PPE, and besides that, we also got reserve sets. So if it's a busy day, they always can have 2 and 3 sets going. But then I would say, in regards to the war in Ukraine, we're stockpiling a lot of stuff on our fire stations to be more independent, which means we're stockpiling stuff everywhere. So most of my fire stations can run independently for up to 7 days without any incoming help from the outside. So we have the beneficiary of that. Yep.
Okay. I think you're to be congratulated in relation to what you've achieved and also how far looking you are. That's quite commendable. So well done.
Yeah, but don't lift any other rocks, because we're quite far behind in other places.
I think the danger for the UK potentially is raising expectations. If you educate firefighters, which is quite correct, they are going to be expecting that those things are in place. And I think a lot of services with resource and cost implications are going to struggle to do that. So you risk, if you like, having that conflict, which is very difficult to manage.
And that discussion is really important, because I can only control what they are doing 8 hours per day. And you're exposing yourselves on your daily life, on your spare time, and on your second job, and whatever. And that's why we're looking into eating healthy, sleeping, and all of that, because we know that also raises the level of cancer. So you need to be cautious with the discussions, and you need to be sure and have a good discussion with the working force, so that they don't draw the wrong conclusions. Because there was a time a few years ago when everyone screamed that I'm gonna die from cancer, and we can't see that now. So you need to be cautious with those discussions.
John, did you want to come in there?
Yeah, sorry, just back to your point. This is about understanding the level of risk first and foremost. So going back to what we talked about, illegal compliance, we've got to understand the level of risk through risk assessment and then educate accordingly. And then with that, as we said, we listened to Avon talking about procedural documents. There are ways. It's not always about spending money. What they've done there is great, but it's not always about spending the money. We can protect people through training, through policy, through procedural documents, with the right level of supervision as well.
Great, yeah. Back to Sam. Yep.
I just wanted to echo one of the comments that this gentleman made just now. Like, some of the firefighting media that's coming out of Sweden and other European countries is top notch. And actually, I don't think there's enough recognition for the quality of training and future-proofing and dynamic stuff that is coming from mainland Europe. And we as a country are benefiting from that. So just a shout out to you guys for investing where you have and actually demonstrating, yes, you might be a small country with much less people, but you are doing some real cutting edge stuff, and firefighters on the ground in this country see that, and we recognise that and we appreciate that, and we'd love to be able to do more to pass information back into mainland Europe and just keep that conversation flowing. So yeah, well done to you guys.
Thank you. Fred Patterson from FTBH Services, ex-5 firefighter and hazmat lead for Hampshire Fire and Rescue Service. Firstly, the Skellefteå model you spoke about is available on YouTube if anyone wants to look at it.
Yeah, and you got the link there.
And my question is, how did you convince the upper management to buy into the contamination subject?
Well, me personally, I started as a firefighter 25 years ago. And then I did some other stuff, and I came back within the fire brigades, and I started in 2009. And I would say it's an age thing as well. And in Sweden, we had there was a changes within the shift. We used to have 3 shifts before, back in the 80s, and then in the 80s they changed to 4 shifts, which means we employed a lot of people in the 80s, and they are retiring now. So it's an age thing as well. And I was always convinced. So they didn't have to convince me, and fortunately and not fortunately, one of my dominating crew commanders, one of the big informal leaders, actually got testicular cancer a couple of years ago. And he survived. He's fine. He's totally fine. But that also made the working force aware that one of their big informal leaders actually took this really serious. And I've only been the director for 6 years, so I haven't been around for 20. So it's the directors and chief fire officers before me as well that has done a good job. But for some reason, it just worked out, I would say. And of course, it wasn't easy. We had to convince people for quite a long time. When I started, it was really cool having the dirtiest helmet.
Yeah. I think just to come in there from a UK perspective, I work at Avon. I'm absolutely driving this. I've got full support of our whole board, and I work across the UK and speak to a lot of chiefs or execs or directors. And I'm pushing on an open door. There is one big barrier to some of this work, and that is finance. We are lacking investment in property, vehicles and capital investment, and we're looking to bring in a new PPE contract in the next 18 months. That's going to hit most fire services on their revenue costs as well. So that's probably one of the big barriers, but we are lobbying for that. So we're trying to make that change.
My name's Billy. I'm an official from the Fire Brigade Union. Firstly, brilliant to hear about how trade unions are central to the work that Peter's been doing over the last 20, 25 years. Brilliant to hear that the union is held in high regard. Great to see our decon badge on as well. Thank you. My question, I think, is mainly aimed at Peter. We've had a bit of discussion here about research, seeking out further research, awaiting further research. Is it your view that we need to do that, or is your view that we have adequate research, we have a platform of research that we can just crack on and start implementing this change rather than delaying and going round in circles?
I would say that we lack research and proof for what actually has done the change. That would be valuable. And then we lack research of what new different materials add on, for example, PFAS and whatever. We lack research there. The problem with Sweden at the moment is most of the finance regarding research and science is going into new wooden buildings, burning. And then, of course, different aspects of the war in Ukraine, preparing the Swedish population for the war. So everything is poured into how can we prepare for war, and all the money is poured into building bedrock shelters and buying protective armor and buying tanks and guns and ammo. So I love research. I'm an engineer myself. So, but there are bits of the puzzle that is lacking, because I'm guessing a bit here. You saw that in the end. We don't know exactly what made the shift. Something did, but we want to know exactly what did it, but we don't know.
If I can just come in there on the UK perspective as well, I think, can you ever have enough research? It's a tricky one, isn't it? But I think you need to draw the line at some point to deliver products, and that's where we need to be in the UK. What I will say is, operationally in the UK, I think we're very, very good up to other areas of the world, okay? I'll give some examples. Some of the research in other countries around wildland fires or domestic dwelling fires, those fire services choose whether they want to wear breathing apparatus. We have operating procedures in the UK through entry control that is a must do on those situations. So I think some of that research is very good and valuable, but how transferable is it here? Because we've already got good control measures in place that they don't do elsewhere.
Yeah, I suppose the view I'm trying to express, I think, is although we could wait eternally for further and further research, there is an adequate sort of bedrock of research that, in our view, we can just crack on and get on with implementing. Unfortunately, there has been some question in the past about the validity of the research that was associated with the FBO. I hope we're past that now, and I hope, in line with getting past that and sort of getting on the same page culturally, as you know, Becky has made clear, hopefully we can use the platform we already have and crack on and start quickly implementing change while we wait for that further research, if that makes sense.
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah, I totally agree with you. We don't need any more research whether or not it's cancerogenic to put out fires. We know that. Stop researching that. We know that. Move on to the next question. So I agree with you. I agree.
Hi, I'm Nick from London Fire Brigade. Yeah, well done on everything you're doing. I feel like we're playing catch up, but we've done quite a lot of what you've done with all the zonal stuff and bagging up PPE. My big thing is with the NFCC and cancer screening. My line manager died mid-40s from cancer, lung cancer, probably mesothelioma or whatever. For us, it's kind of about identifying, you know, you can have all the research that you want and all that kind of stuff, but by having regular screening and stuff like that, you'll pick it up early. It'll give you the statistics that you need to kind of back it up. So I just want to know kind of where the NFCC, what they're doing about cancer screening for like the UK, etc.
Yeah, really good question. I think as part of our national project, we've got a work package around health surveillance, and that's going to be delivered some part probably during next year in phase 2 of the project. We can advocate at some point maybe some screening programs, but they're already available on the NHS. That's what we need. There are new screening tests that are being developed and in trial at this moment in time. We're waiting for those results before we can advocate for that or not advocate it. But I think at some point in the future, we will put out some information, some recommendations. But at this moment in time, it's going back to what's already available on the NHS. And I'll give an example around prostate cancer. There's a PSA test. I think it's a PSA test. Yeah. And the efficacy of those tests from the NHS is at times questionable. False negatives, false positives. So I think we just need to have an in with the NHS and see if we can get some of those screening programs with higher efficacy so we can then recommend them as a NFCC.
Okay, right. Right, I think that brings this session, part of the session, to a conclusion. So thank you very much, everyone.
Thanks for listening. Remember that by taking time to learn from our speakers, you can earn CPD points from our partner CPDme. So do check out the link in the show notes. Our thanks to MSA Safety for their continued support for our podcast, and to Smart Digital for producing this series. If you enjoyed this episode, be sure to subscribe to For Every Response, the podcast from Emergency Services Times.